colleges that are doing positive things to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what we said in the conference of June 20th, 2016 was, how do we create those pebbles of possibilities? How do we expand them? How do we duplicate them? How do we emulate them? How do we expand? That's what we're trying to do. The concept of Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable is to say to every part of our region, we want an ongoing commitment, not a one-time commitment, but an ongoing commitment. Embracing what we call the revised Rooney Rule, that every job from entry level to the C-suite, that an African American, Hispanic, someone of color will be considered. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden all the jobs are taken by people of color. It means that people of color are now in the mix ongoingly. The hybrid Rooney Rule, that before every contract is let, any contract is let, that an African American, Hispanic, someone of color will be considered. And our feeling is, our philosophy is very simple, that if every entity in the region takes on embracing the revised Rooney Rule, the hybrid Rooney Rule, over a period of years, we will build wealth for people of color. Wealth is, if you're not working, you begin to get a check every 2 weeks, that's wealth. If you have a company or create a company and the company is expanded, that's building wealth.
My vision for an equitable workforce in Pittsburgh is one that's more inclusive, more diverse, and begins to address the myriad of challenges that people face, whether it is from awareness, opportunity, and support to fill those positions that arise.
Good morning. Good morning. It's a beautiful day. My name is Richard A. Stewart, Jr. I'm the first vice president and NAC Pittsburgh acting president, and I'm your timekeeper today. So bear with me with the time, because we would like to get out of here on time. So if I put the little time up, please adhere to it. I appreciate it. Now, I would like to introduce a gentleman. It gives me my honor to introduce Mr. Bill Flanagan. He is the Chief Corporate Relations Officer for the Allegheny County Conference and Community Redevelopment. So that's it, Mr. Flanagan. I will step down. Thank you.
There you go. That's That's everything you need to know, right? Yeah, that's it. Good to see, good to see everybody. Great to be back this year for, I guess, the fifth annual Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable. It's amazing to think that we've been at it for 5 years. I hope, and I think what we're going to hear today is that some folks are actually chipping away at some of the issues that have been identified in the first few years of this event. And we're going to hear some best practices of some organizations that are really making progress. And that's what this is about. It's about improving the region's performance and really dealing with the challenges we face as a community. You know, we're very fortunate here in southwestern Pennsylvania. We engineered a pretty remarkable comeback over the last generation from the ashes of our industrial economy. And today we're really well positioned. We have, you know, terrific financial services section here in Pittsburgh. We've got great energy resources. We've got manufacturing all over the place, information technology, healthcare, life sciences. Not only have we recovered all the jobs that were lost 30-some years ago, and all the jobs that were lost more recently in the Great Recession, we've built a really strong economic foundation to take the region into the future. But the problem we've got is too many people here have been left behind. They haven't been able to enjoy the successes that the region on average has enjoyed. And I always tell people, you got to be careful looking at the averages in Pittsburgh, because the averages look pretty good. When you look inside what's going on in the regional economy, we've still got a lot of work to do here in Pittsburgh and in southwestern Pennsylvania to make sure that everybody can participate in what we believe at the Allegheny Conference is a very, very bright future to come. And so it's in that spirit of just getting better as a community and more effective and bringing more people along that we've all gathered today to kind of share some stories and learn a little bit from each other, and hopefully do a little bit, even, well, maybe not a little bit better, maybe a lot better by this time next year when we reconvene for the 6th Annual Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable. From the very beginning of this event, we've been fortunate to be hosted here at Duquesne University. It's been a terrific venue here in the Power Center as we come together every year. Of course, we couldn't do it without the generosity of Duquesne University. Since we started the roundtable, Duquesne University has gotten a new president, and it's my great pleasure to introduce him today for some welcoming remarks. Please welcome Ken Gormley.
Thank you very much, Bill, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Duquesne is proud to welcome the Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable back to the Bluff for the 5th annual conference. My predecessor, President Charles Dougherty, was an early supporter of this effort, and I'm proud to continue this important tradition here on the Bluff. One of my major priorities in my new role as the 13th president of Duquesne University is to become even more connected to the region around us, to work closely with leaders like Bill Flanagan, County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, Mayor Bill Peduto, Tim Stevens, and all of you to make Pittsburgh a greater place to work, to live. So it's exciting to see such a wonderful crowd this morning. And it's especially fitting that we gather this year as we remember the life and the legacy of one of Duquesne's greatest alumni, Ambassador Dan Rooney. Dan, as you may know, his father Art and his son Art II are all Duquesne graduates, and they built and continue to maintain the Steelers as a model professional sports franchise, and they're successful on the field and in the business world because their organizational culture is built on the values and ethics that Duquesne has always promoted, diversity and inclusion being at the top of the list. It was no surprise that Dan was the driving force behind the NFL rule that bears his name, the Rooney Rule. And this, of course, said that minority candidates should always be in the mix when making important hires for coaching, for executive positions, and it has been equally appropriate that so many companies and organizations around the country, really around the world, including Duquesne and CEIR, have embraced the Rooney Rule and adapted it for even greater impact. So we are going to miss Dan Rooney's bigger-than-life presence. I'm actually going to be with his widow, Pat Rooney, next week. But we're going to continue on our quest to achieve his vision in business, in government, and the community. It's not just the right thing to do, as you all know. It's also the smart, competitive thing to do for our region, for all our fellow citizens, in order to grow and prosper here in Allegheny County. As a former law professor and constitutional law professor, specifically and dean here at Duquesne University, I'm proud of the work of our faculty members to promote equal opportunity for all citizens. And later this morning, you'll hear from one of them, one of our clinical professors, Tracy McCants-Lewis, on her work on Ban the Box to allow fair consideration of job applicants with criminal records. We're very proud of Tracy's work on the cutting edge of issues of very significant importance to this community. So all of us at Duquesne share our spirit and founders' commitment to the pursuit of social justice, which is why all of you are here today. Today's program is just one of many ways that we put that into action. I know that you have a busy, fast-paced agenda. I hope that every person in this room will be inspired and energized to do even more. So thank you again for joining us this morning, and my best wishes for a wonderful conference. Thank you.
Stay right here for a second, Ken. I think we have a little presentation here for you, Doris and Tim.
We have been blessed for 5 years. I'm going to ask Doris if you would read this.
Duquesne University and staff applaud and thank Ken Gorley for hosting the Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable Conference for each of all the 5 years of the CEIR conferences beginning in 2013, presented Monday, June 19, 2017, to Ken Gormley, President at Duquesne University Power Center Ballroom, by Tim Stevens, the Black Political Empowerment Project Chairman and CEIR Working Group Facilitator.
All right.
Thank you, Tim and Doris, very much. This is right up there with the Stanley Cup, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Ken Gormley, everybody here at Duquesne University. This is a fabulous venue to be able to do this event every year. One thing we realized last year with the onset of social media was that this event was not really completely prepared. Last year, which we discovered on the fly, we did not have a Twitter handle for the roundtable. So the good news is we've got one this year, and I've been reminded that I need to make sure everybody sees that, and we hope that in addition to the folks of all of us in the room today, you'll share the fact that you're in the room today with anybody you communicate with on social media, and tell them what you're learning. So I'm going to get things started. I'm going to do a little selfie right now with this part of the crowd right here. And then when our next speaker comes up, I'm going to tweet using our brand new Twitter handle there. So there you go. Everybody smile, okay? We're going to get your picture. And do one more there. There, now everybody's eyes are open. Very good. All right. Watch for yourself on social media in the next couple of minutes. We'll get that Twitter handle back up there. All right. We timed out. Good. My pleasure next to introduce another individual without whom none of this would be possible. As a matter of fact, it was back when Rich Fitzgerald was running for office, I think, the first time out, is that right? Yeah, he was running for office, and of course Tim, as Tim does, collared him someplace and said, we've really got to begin to deal with this issue of the disparity of economic opportunity between white and black Pittsburgh, and really white and minority Pittsburgh. And Rich stepped up and he said, yeah, when I'm in, that's what we'll do. And Rich has embraced this event from the very beginning. He continues to be with us here again today. Please welcome Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Bill. And yes, you have it right. And you know how hard it is to say no to Mr. Stevens when he asks you something. But it's good to see so many people here that this has grown over the last 5 years, and not just grown in the people who participate and show up to the conference. once a year, but actually take it back to the organizations that they work at and they lead, whether it's in the HR department or at the C-suite level, because, you know, Pittsburgh is really a city in a region that has been taken notice by the rest of the country and the rest of the world as a place on the move. But as Bill said, in those macro level numbers about job growth and millennials moving here and fastest growing city among millennials, we have these disparities. And we know nationally there's this anger that's going on through the electoral process, et cetera. But we have it here in Allegheny County. We had an election a couple of weeks ago. We all know that Mayor Peduto won by almost 70% of the vote. But we have 129 other cities in Allegheny County. And over 20 mayors got thrown out of office 2 weeks ago in Allegheny County. So it just goes to show there's still many places where things aren't going so well, and that's the work we've got to make sure that we do. And as the county executive leading a large organization of over 6,000 employees, we feel like we've got to lead by example. And I give that direction to County Manager McCain, and then he gives it to all the directors that we have. Laura Zaspel's here today, our HR director, our MBE, WBE folks are here, Ruth and her team, all working together to make sure that we lead by example. So I always like to come and report, and I want to make sure I have good numbers to report, and we actually do. So since I've been in office in year 6, we've hired 2,500 people, new people that have come to work for the county, replacing some of those folks, and over 25% of them have been minority hires, which I'm very proud of because, the population in Allegheny County being approximately 13%, we're well above where we are. And among females, 62% of those hires were females. So we're kind of balancing out now for years in which the female population was also underrepresented. But also at the director level, at the director and deputy director level, the people that are in charge of the various departments of public works and the jail and the cane and public defender's office, economic development, et cetera. 38% of those have been female and 23% have been minorities who are now leading our directors in the various departments. And then, of course, everyone knows about the boards and authorities that are appointed by the county executive, the Port Authority, the Airport Authority, the SCA, et cetera. And I'm proud to say that 48% of those appointments have been female and 22% have been minority. Again, we're above the threshold of where we should be. And I think Bill said it very well. If we're going to compete and we're going to continue to grow, we've got to reach out and we need everybody's talents that are involved, because the companies that I meet with on a regular basis, their biggest worry right now is, are they going to be able to find the talent that they need, knowing that Google and Uber and the energy companies and Shell and PNC and UPMC and all the great companies that we have are also going to be needing people over that time frame. So is Pittsburgh a good place to come when you're going to be competing? And I think we've got to meet that challenge. We've got to meet that challenge to say, yes, we not only have talent, we're developing the talent that we have, and we're bringing new talent in to continue the good work that we have. Ken Gormley mentioned the Rooney Rule, and again, I want to thank Duquesne University, one of our great institutions that attracts people from all over the world to come here. They adopted the Rooney Rule, as did we. When I took office back in 2012, we adopted the Rooney Rule as well. I think it's a great example, and then Mayor Peduto and I encouraged and sent a letter to all of corporate Pittsburgh to try to, replicate that and do the same thing. We've instituted Ban the Box, which is a kind of giving folks a second chance who have paid their dues and maybe did something in their youth that they not too proud of, but now they're mature, now they've grown up, they're ready to work and ready to roll up their sleeves. Let's not hold some things that were done years ago against them. Let's give them a chance and give them an interview and give them the opportunity to prove the value they can bring to your organization. 21 and Able, our disability community, making sure that we reach out to that group of folks that have a lot of talent, but sometimes are thought of in a different way, that they're not thought of as their talent, they're thought of as the things that that may hold them back? Well, working with the United Way and some of our corporate partners, we've developed a program to include people in the disability community in the corporations and mainstream workforce. So we're all working together on all these things that are going to make Pittsburgh a better place. We want to continue to make sure that we do that. You certainly have my support that I'm going to use my efforts in my office and the folks that we have in our administration to do so. And the last thing I just want to talk about real quickly is something we're reaching out to youth. You know, Mayor Peduto, when he came into office, says, you know, we have a summer work program that's doing pretty well, but we need to include a lot more people. So he started a Learn and Earn program that we embraced and we joined into, and over 2,000 high school kids are able to work, and not just work picking up garbage in the parks and cutting grass, but working in our major corporations that I just mentioned, the Covestros, in the UPMCs and the Highmarks and the AGHs, our universities, et cetera. So we have now, you know, put a program together where youth now have a summer-long internship program that they're heading on. So we've got to make sure not only the people that are in the workforce now have these opportunities, but we're preparing the future for that. So I want to thank Tim for his great work and his efforts. I'm always glad never to have to speak after him. I think I made that a part of the deal, that I get to speak before Tim because he's such a dynamic and robust speaker. Have a great conference. Let's keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah, Rich, we saw that in the rider you sent over before you agreed to come, right? Will not speak after Tim Stevens. So we definitely took that into account this morning. You know, you mentioned when you came on board that you really sent out the instructions to everybody who worked for you about paying attention to this issue. And I was really pleased to see the airport represented in the video that we saw before and some of the efforts they're making. I don't know if everybody here is aware, but our airport's been on a roll over the last couple of years. I mean, new airlines, new service. I saw Rich at the airport on Friday night. He took the inaugural flight from Reykjavik, Iceland on WOW Air, which now is serving Pittsburgh 5 days a week, year round, if you want it as our new gateway to Europe. And this Friday, I'm going over to Germany with him. We're taking our television show to Germany, and we're going to fly back on Condor Airlines that's starting nonstop service to Frankfurt. A couple of days a week initially just for the summer season. So for somebody who works with the business community, incredibly important. It just really will help all of us to attract greater investment by international companies. It also helps companies like UPMC right here in the region that are becoming increasingly global, and they need better connectivity. And the airport's making some incredible strides, and that's going to create opportunity for everybody who lives here. But it's also wonderful to see them walking the walk when it comes to really being serious about making sure everybody can participate in that process as well in terms of the economic opportunity that's being created. So congratulations to Rich and everybody at the Airport Authority for sure. Now, the man who nobody wants to speak after. So it's my pleasure to be able to turn the program over to him, and then I get a break. I don't have to come up right after Tim. He's going to introduce somebody else, and I get to come up after him. But obviously, none of this would be happening were it not for Tim Stevens, who has been on the case, obviously not for the last 5 years, 5 or 6 years, but for a generation, really working so hard to try to make a difference for our region and nudge us, not ever so gently, pretty forcefully at times, into a future that really can provide opportunity for all of us, all Pittsburghers in southwestern Pennsylvania. Please welcome Tim Stevens.
I've been told by one of our young members, Will Anderson, to remind you, hashtag CEIR 2017, hashtag CEIR 2017. Thank you all for being here. Give yourselves a hand because we're here to make a difference today. Are we here to make a difference, Dr. Humphrey? My friend, I'm asking all of you to look in the program for my official remarks. They're written on the inside, so I don't have to repeat them. Okay. One of our CEIR members, who happens to not be African American and happens to be Jewish for that matter, reminded me recently that today is a certain day. Anybody know what it is? Juneteenth. Barry Nathan from the Jewish Federation. Give him a hand. If you don't know what it is, it's the oldest known celebration commemorating the end of slavery in this nation. Dating back to 1865. It was on June 19th that the Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended, that the enslaved were now free. Note that this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official January 3rd, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, under the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865, the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. I just realized it's only been 152 years. 20 years of my life, black people could not vote in every part of this country. If I was born 80 years ago, I might be in slavery, right on the edge of the end. I discovered the other day my sister's items as she was leaving her home, a picture. It's my great-grandfather. I've never shown this picture to anybody outside my family. Doris Carson Williams, he was born a slave, or he was enslaved, died free. When I encounter white people who can say they've had 3 or 4 generations of attorneys, 3 or 4 generations of professionals, most people of color cannot relate to that. I was the first to graduate from college in my family. Many people of color were the first to graduate, or maybe the second. We go back generations, literally, to slavery. So as we celebrate this conversation for diversity, equity, and inclusion, let's be serious about what we're confronting. We're confronting history that's not that old. The other day, PPG McGarry joined CEOs to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's in the back of your folder. PPG announced that Chairman and CEO Michael McGarry joined a group of more than 150 CEOs from some of the world's leading companies in signing the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. Were we not excited the other day when our hockey team brought home the trophy? We've been excited by the Steelers. We've been excited by the Pirates. Come on. We have been blessed. And Rob DiMache, what I want to have happen, as my friend Deb Stadowski, who's contributed so many hours to this, said to me the other day, you see, you saw my picture of my granddad. Put him back up, please. My son is about to be 16, because I waited till I was half dead and almost retired to have a child. But the question is fascinating when we were talking. What will Pittsburgh look like to my son's grandchildren? Greg Spencer, what will this region look like? What we want to have happen, we want to raise those trophies for the Steelers, for the Pirates, for our Penguins. Raise them. But we want to raise a new trophy, Esther Bush, that the Pittsburgh region is #1 in diversity, #1 in equity, and #1 in inclusion. You've heard some comments about the Rooney Rule. We have sourced our work for these 5 years around what we call the expansion of the Rooney Rule. We call it the revised Rooney Rule with results, meaning the people of color are considered from entry level to the C-suite and all jobs in between. The hybrid Rooney Rule, Tony Silva, meaning for supplier diversity, that people of color are considered for contractual opportunities, be it building a building, painting the building, putting the floor down, or professional services. Dan Rooney happened to be given the opportunity to lead that effort. And in your program, in that program, in the inner cover, you'll see the plaque that we're giving to Jim, and also the Fritz Pollard Alliance, who did some of the background work that led to the opportunity for Dan Rooney to take the leadership. Dan was one of the champions of our region, one of the class acts of our region, one of the heroes of all of us. And he leaves behind the success of the Rooney Rule across this nation and our efforts in this room to expand the power of the concept. We'd like to bring forward to receive this tribute from Corporate Equity Inclusion Roundtable and the Black Political Empowerment Project, Mr. Jim Rooney.
Thanks, Tim. First I'm here to say thank you. It's a privilege for me to get to stand in recognition of my father in several different venues over the last couple months since he's passed. But this one is truly special. This meant so much to my father. And I want to thank everyone for their courage, everyone for their willingness to continue to push to do the work that was the right thing. You've heard so many things if you've had the chance to hear or read some of the remembrances of my father about what a kind man he was. But he wasn't so kind to his kids. He was pretty tough on us, and he expected us to be great. And his definition of greatness was very, very clear. He said, you do the right thing. And the right thing to him, he had a very clear definition of that. And it wasn't about making the most money. It wasn't about becoming a big dude or becoming famous. It was about when you were done with a project, more people were served well. Things were better off than when you started. And he very much thought that about the Rooney Rule. He understood the limitations of it when he started it, but he also knew that he needed to work with all the folks he'd been working with to take this first step. And that it was about doing the right thing, and that we're all going to have to continue to have that courage, that willingness to continue to do the right thing. It's a privilege for me to get the chance to be a part of that for a brief moment here, but you folks are doing this in such a greater capacity, and Tim has been a friend of my father's and a leader in this effort, and everyone else who's involved. So it's a privilege to be recognized in that way, and he would be very, very grateful. So thank you very much.
Very quickly, Deb has a very, very short video that we're honored to have here. It was a segment from WQED-TV, The State of Black Pittsburgh, that Esther Bush helped to organize. It featured the CIR working group member Janet Manuel, the Deputy Director of Personnel for the City of Pittsburgh, who's out of town. We wanted to show this quick moment.
These days, businesses, governments, and sports teams are all talking about diversifying their workforces. But how do we make sure diversity and inclusion are more than just buzzwords?
And just recently, Mayor Peduto last month made an executive order, and that is for the city to adopt the Rooney Rule. And so that is one of our initiatives that we are doing to enhance the diversity within our employee workforce. So we encourage every employer within the city of Pittsburgh to replicate what we are doing as the city of Pittsburgh, and that is embrace diversity and inclusion, realize the benefits that it has, that people of different walks of life and backgrounds and education can bring so much to the table that someone else may not have thought of. And that can only enhance their organization.
All right, you can all watch the full video segment online. It also features Esther Bush, president of the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh. She's also a participant in today's program. As a matter of fact, we actually don't have to go home and turn on your television or your computer to watch Esther, because she's about to come up and introduce our keynote speaker. Please welcome Esther Bush, the president and chief executive officer of the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh.
Good morning. How's everybody? It is a pleasure for me to introduce our keynote speaker today. Kathy Humphrey serves as the University of Pittsburgh Senior Vice Chancellor for Engagement, Secretary of the Board of Trustees, and Chancellor Patrick Gallagher's Chief of Staff. In those roles, she oversees Pitt's internal and external relations, focusing on facilitating business engagement, strategic initiatives and partnerships, and government at all levels. Kathy has earned numerous awards and recognitions throughout her career, including the YWCA Tribute to Women Leadership Award, the Nellie Leadership Award, and distinction as one of the Pittsburgh Courier's 50 Women of Excellence. You notice this trend of leadership and excellence in her awards. She also earned the Pitt African American Alumni Council's Sankofa Award, which honors community members who have offered outstanding educational support to students of African descent at Pitt. Outside the university, Kathy serves on the board of directors of Three Rivers Adoption Council, the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh, and Leadership Pittsburgh. In 2013, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation appointed Kathy to the Advisory Council for the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. 2 years earlier, she served as a fellow in the International Women's Leadership Foundation. Kathy earned a Bachelor's of Science degree at Central Missouri State University, now the University of Central Missouri, a Master's of Arts degree at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and a doctorate in educational leadership at the St. Louis University. And she maintains a faculty appointment at the School of Education at Pitt. Kathy is an active member of the Macedonia Baptist Church and of Delta Sigma Theta. She has been married to her husband, Lau, for over 30 years, and they are the parents of twin sons, Daniel and David. Now, this last statement I need you to listen to. She could start her own college. Her extended family includes 10 siblings, as well as 86 nieces and nephews. I think she needs to be working on a college campus because she's used to helping kids. Kathy, we love you. Come on up. I wasn't going to say this, but I have to. One day you need to hear Kathy sing. I'm done.
That's not my job today. So it won't be the day. Good morning. Good morning. I am excited to see all of you, and I want to thank Esther for that kind introduction. And I want to also thank her for the incredible work that she does through the Urban League with her incredible team. That is a hard-working team, and I want them to know that I am proud of all of the accomplishments that they have achieved. I also would like to thank Tim Stevens for inviting me to be here with you today. I'm honored because as I look into the audience, I see so many people I know. That makes it a little bit easier to stand here. And so the people that I know out there, I expect you to be shaking your head while I'm talking today and supporting me all the way as we begin this work. I'm honored to be here because this is another anniversary for our country. It's an important date in our history. It's important because on June 19th, 1964, Pennsylvania U.S. Senator Joseph Clark and Hughes Scott voted on the legislation which sent the Civil Rights Act to President Lyndon Johnson's desk. Did you know that? Now you do. Shortly after Senator Scott received a letter from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. thanking him for his support, the senator wrote to him and said, "It is my deepest and sincere belief that this law will help make all Americans enjoying the privilege of citizenship." The privilege of citizenship. The Civil Rights Act changed our nation in so many ways and moved the needle forward for so many Americans. And so many Pennsylvanians since then have been on the right side of history. But while we recognize this date for its significance, we know there is still much work to be done. Is that right? That's what I love about being with a lot of my people in the audience. They talk back. Join us, white people, join us. As you know, we have come here today gathered around a conference theme of exploring formulas for success. As I pondered on your theme and the directions I had been given by Tim, I was reminded of a story about a queen who devised a formula for success. Now, it is true that we have our own Queen Esther of Pittsburgh, who has implemented many successful formulas. But allow me to introduce to some and reacquaint others with Queen Esther of Persia, who used the formula of success way back in 479 BC. While Queen Esther was a Persian queen, her birth name was Hadassah, for she was an orphan adopted and renamed Esther to conceal her Jewish identity by her cousin Mordecai. Esther was a passer. At one point in Esther's reign, there was a man by the name of Haman who decided that all the Jews should be killed and their possessions given to the king, and so the decree was sent out and sent forth that all Jews would be killed. When Mordecai found out, he sent a message to Esther to ask the king to save his people. Initially, Esther replied that she could not help. How many times have you replied that you could not help with your actions in addition to your words? But Mordecai reminded her that while she may be up in the king's palace, that she too was a Jew. And maybe she had become queen for a purpose, for a time such as this. So she had to be reminded of who she really was. Sometimes we all must be reminded of who we really are. Is that right? Once Esther understood the danger of inactivity, once she understood her purpose, she quickly devised a formula to save her people. Her plan required her to take risk and to be bold. At one point, she is quoted as saying, "If I perish, I perish," realizing that even her lack of action would not stop her own demise. Our lack of action will not stop our own demise. She implemented her formula, and having the plan alone would do nothing, for her formula had to be used to determine its effectiveness. There's a lot of plans out there. Not only did her plan work, it saved her people and changed the course of history. And today, many Jewish families celebrate Purim because of Esther's formula for success. In examining her formula, we see that she had to remember who she was. For who she was had something to do with the purpose of her life. She had to have more than a vision statement. She had to have more than a plan. She had to have and be courageous and bold to implement her plan. If I had time to tell you the whole story, you would have learned that she was also evaluating her plan as she implemented so that she could revise the plan when needed to ensure that she reached her intended outcomes. We at the University of Pittsburgh are trying to use a similar formula to develop a culture of diversity and inclusion. And Tim has asked me to share how we are implementing our formula. That is my plan for these brief minutes. Now, you should know that we do not proclaim to have it all right, but we are seriously taking steps to get it right. We are seriously taking steps to get it right. What are we taking? Yes, you're still with me. Good. Our formula is based on the same principles as Esther's. We are constantly examining who we are. We are devising plans that we hope will create our new reality, a new picture of who we are. We are implementing our plan by purposeful and strategic actions, and we are measuring our progress to ensure that we become an institution where diversity inclusion is in the fiber of our existence. One thing, and one of the first things that our new Chancellor, Patrick Gallagher, found when he came to Pitt was while we believed in the value of diversity and inclusion, while we aspired to be a place where diversity and inclusion was an intrinsic value, we needed to do more work in order to be who we wanted to be. The Chancellor, along with his senior leadership team and many others, believed we could do more in our hiring practices, in our decision-making, in our engagement with the community, and so we listened. We listened internally and externally. We listened to students, faculty, alumni, and staff. We also listened to the words coming from our community, from our neighbors, from our minority vendors, and from our own experiences. And we were concerned. We were concerned with what we learned, for what we heard was not what we wanted to be. So we followed Esther's lead and developed a plan that would create our new truth, a plan that we hope would replace our current truth. And when we created our institutional strategic plan, promoting diversity and inclusion became one of our core priorities. James Escuzes and Barry Posner teaches us strong leadership models the way. Strong leadership models the way. Acting on the third element of our formula, implementation, the Chancellor and other senior leaders modeled the way. And we began to fill positions of leadership. Now, there are 10 people of color in senior leadership positions at Pitt. I'm very proud of that fact. Each year, and they're not, these are serious positions. Take a look, serious positions, right? Each year, Pitt chooses a theme to highlight, to learn more about, to explore, and to further enhance our work in. It is an opportunity for our community to pause and reflect on how we can strengthen our committee and our commitment to a specific area. So we decided that this year would be the year of diversity and inclusion. We have held more than 200 events, lectures, and seminars. We have created new programs that will continue to be implemented, and many more new programs are underway. In a few weeks, we will have a special announcement that I believe will be the crown jewel of our year of diversity, so stay tuned. Can't tell you yet. The year of diversity and inclusion has been a wonderful catalyst to our future work. 2 years ago, we created the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and elevated its core value to a university-wide level by naming our first Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion. We redesigned our affirmative action program to be more than a report that we provide to the federal government, to be more than a report that we provide to the federal government, but a report that we use to challenge our various units to become who we want to be. We have encouraged each of our hiring administrators to ensure that all applicant pools are diverse. We are taking a hard look at trailing spouse programs so we can better entice strong applicants to come to Pittsburgh by finding employment opportunities for their spouses. This is an area where you could be helpful to us and we could be helpful to you. And please know that we are open to building that type of relationship with you. If we can get 2 instead of 1, you're better and I'm better. We have expanded our affinity resource groups to provide additional support to those in our university community who are members of underrepresented groups. We have put the right people in the room to examine the possibility of implementing the ban the box with the hope of eliminating the chilling effect it can have on those who may not apply because the box exists. And we are recruiting students in locations that are more heavily populated with students of color. We are also looking to recruit more students right here in Pittsburgh, right here in our region. We have a new partnership today with the Pittsburgh Public Schools and the Community College of Allegheny County. We are developing programs that will challenge our students to think of themselves as global citizens. And all of our students are asked to take what we call the Pitt Promise of Civility during freshman convocation. The Pitt Promise clearly informs our students how we expect them to treat one another in our community. It clearly speaks to our value of diversity and inclusion. The president of our Faculty Senate is working with a committee to create Pitt's first diversity inclusion value statement, a statement that we hope will be given to every faculty and every staff member to remind them of who we are. And in the event that something occurs, it will remind them of where we will stand. And we are looking at ways to increase diversity in Pittsburgh by keeping our students here after they graduate. We just launched the Pitt Pathway program, which is a grow your own program. We, along with every university in this city, bring hundreds of students of colors to this city each year. If we can capture just a few of them, we can increase the diversity of Pittsburgh immediately. This is yet another way we could collaborate. For if your company was willing to partner with us to provide students with scholarships that are attached to jobs after graduation, we may be able to quickly reach our goal of making Pittsburgh more diverse. But we have to be serious if we're going to do this work. We took a hard look at the physical diversity and our physical design. And we worked hard to ensure that our campus was accessible to all. And we created a diversity and inclusion certificate program that I recently had the honor to attend the graduation ceremony last week for this year-long program, where we challenge faculty and staff to enhance their knowledge and their commitment to strengthening our culture of diversity and inclusion. This is a year-long commitment that they take to get stronger, to make the institution better. We have created a dashboard to measure our success because we believe that which is measured grows. And we want to see growth in the diversity of our faculty, students, and staff. We want to see growth in the diversity of our mid-managers. We want to see growth in the number of local underrepresented Pittsburghers in our applicant pools and in our employment. For some of these areas, we plan to measure ourselves against other Association of American Universities who have been successful in this area. But our focus goes beyond the campus. We have a goal to increase minority and women vendors. Along with the African American Chamber of Commerce, we have developed programs to introduce underrepresented vendors to our institutional department heads. They are the ones who spend the money. And we have developed programs to help the vendors understand how to do business with the university with the hope that they will be more successful in gaining the bid, in the bid process. Much work is being done, but we are not focusing on building a stronger culture of diversity and inclusion because it's a nice thing to do. We're not focused on building a stronger culture of diversity and inclusion because it's the trendy thing to do. We're not even focusing on building a strong diversity and inclusion culture because if we don't, some of you will be mad at us. We have pledged our commitment to this issue because we know that leveraging our differences make our work and our world even greater. It is simply good business to develop a culture of diversity and inclusion. It's good business. For gaining a diversity, an environment of diversity and inclusion helps us to gain a diverse number of ideas, a diverse number of constructs that will advance our research, that will advance our teaching, that will advance our service. I have shared just a few things we're doing to try to move the needle in the right direction. But our work, like your work, is far from being done. As we implement our plan, we continue to evaluate our work, examine its impact, all to determine our next steps. Dr. King once said, faith is taking the first step, even when you cannot see the entire staircase. We cannot see the entire staircase. We cannot see the entire staircase on this climb to create an institution where diversity and inclusion is woven into the fabric of our existence. But we are willing to take a step of faith and continue to examine who we are. We are willing to take a step of faith that will require us to continue to develop and implement plans that we believe will establish a new truth about whom we are. We are willing to take a step of faith and be bold enough to measure our success and, yes, even our failures. So like Esther, we can change the course of history. We can change our current truth. We can change the lives of our students, faculty, staff, community members, alumni, and in doing so, maybe even change the world. Thank you.
Did you give me a game plan? Did you hear a game plan? Do not drop this on your foot.
All right.
To help me with this. Marla Bradford is one of our members of our working group. Can you see that?
No, I don't wear I didn't have my
All
glasses
right.
on.
Let me
You
do
didn't
it.
tell me.
It's hard to read, but it's a beautiful thing. Isn't that
Sure
nice?
is.
It's beautiful.
Very. I know exactly where it's going to sit.
You got it? The Black Political Empowerment Project and Corporate Equity Inclusion Roundtable CER Working Group salute Dr. Kathy Humphrey, Senior Vice Chancellor for Engagement and Chief of Staff, Chancellor's Office, University of Pittsburgh, for being the inspirational keynote speaker for the 5th Annual Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable Conference, presented Monday, June 19th, 2017. You want to have that to her?
Yes.
Marla Bradford from Duquesne.
Thank you.
All right, beautiful.
I'll take a picture.
I'm gonna take, oh. Let's give her another hand, everybody. Back to Bill Platt.
Kathy, congratulations. Thank you so much. And congratulations to everybody at Pitt. You're doing some amazing things. You know, the Allegheny Conference, and my boss, Dennis Yablonsky, our CEO, is speaking closer to the end of the morning. And for the last year or so, we've been engaged in a process of thinking hard about economic inclusion in our region and what more the conference might be able to do than we're already doing to try to help to close the disparity gap. And one of the things that we've done as part of that process is we held a series of listening sessions with kind of a cross-section of the African American community, young professionals as well as established leaders like Esther and Doris Carson Williams, you're going to hear from in a second. And I think the one word that kept popping out of all those sessions, and it really occurred to me as I was listening to Kathy as well, as we think about, as a business community, how to deal with these issues and how to do better, was the word intentionality. And that everybody involved has to be very intentional to think about these issues, put them front and center all the time, and then act on those intentions. And if you don't keep that word in mind all the time, intentionality, having the intention to do better, you're just going to drift. It's very easy to fall into our old habits and hang out with the people we hang out with all the time and do business with the people we do business all the time. And that's a painless process. It's really easy. But if you're intentional about the way you think about these issues, you're going to go that extra mile. You're going to take that extra phone call. You're maybe going to spend a few minutes more in a meeting or a job interview, and you might make a different decision if you're intentional about it. And so that's a word that over at the Allegheny Conference has been more and more a topic of conversation and discussion as we think about what we're going to do forward in this area to try to be a little more effective in the future as well. And we hope to be able to announce something before the end of this year about some new steps that the Allegheny Conference intends to make with intention to do more to help close the gap that we know we all have when it comes to economic disparity in the region. I mentioned one of the voices we always listen to, and you've already heard from a few today. I think about Esther Bush, but one of the voices we always listen to as we think about these issues is Doris Carson Williams, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of the African American Chamber of Commerce of Western Pennsylvania. We've had a close working relationship since Doris got that organization off the ground in the late 90s, and we really pay attention to what she has to say about this dynamic of the business community and the African American community more specifically in our region. Doris is going to moderate our next panel. And please welcome Doris Carson Williams and the panelists. You can come on up and she'll introduce you all.
Good morning, everyone. I think before I do that, I would really like for Bill Flanagan to allow me to welcome the mayor. He just walked in. Come on, Mayor.
And I have to apologize, I'm on my way to Cleveland right now, so the only thing worse than having to go to Cleveland is having to go to Cleveland in the rain. I'll be brief. We have everyone gathered here with an opportunity to do something really great. The city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, we've taken measures to make sure that we follow the Rooney Rule. And every corporation that's here today should do the same. It's easy. And what we need is for you to go back and to tell the folks that you work with that this is an easy thing that we can do, but we can also make Pittsburgh the type of a city that other cities would want to follow. The county and the city have also banned the box. We've realized that we have the opportunity to judge people by their talent, not by their past. And I can tell you firsthand that it has been successful for the city of Pittsburgh in getting quality candidates into positions. I can tell you of a person who for over a decade was never given an opportunity for employment, who we brought into Public Works, and his supervisor wrote me and said, I can't lose him. Make sure that he stays on board. I can tell you about a person who's still on probation, who is number 2 in the entire parking authority in the amount of tickets that he writes. And all he wants is the opportunity to stay on board so he can get full-time health. Now, these are people who've had opportunities taken away from them. I need you to go back and tell your company the water's warm. We've already been able to prove that this is successful. We have been able to create new programs in the city where we will no longer, at the end of the year, take a measurement of how many minority companies, women-owned companies, veteran-owned companies have done work in the city. We're no longer going to measure it because we're going to do it contract by contract, and we're going to do it as city council votes. So council will know how many women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses are in the contract at the beginning. So we won't even have to worry of whether or not we're going to hit our goals, because we'll be doing it all along the way. And I need you to go back to your companies and tell them the same. These aren't hard things. But if we do those three issues, if we ban the box, if we do the Rooney Rule and provide people with opportunity, and if we make sure that our contracts are being written in a way where everyone has an opportunity, and by the way, the cost of the contracts go down, not up, because competition lowers price, we will make a city that other cities will want to be like. So, you have a day to figure this out. There's a lot more issues that are going to be discussed. There's a lot more and better ideas that will be discussed. But please try to find a way to leave this room united, that we can at least get those three things done today.
That's what you call perfect timing. As president of the African American Chamber of Commerce here in Western Pennsylvania, our mission is to continuously improve business opportunities so that we can create a level playing field for African American business owners and professionals and our constituency of membership, which is 78% African American. The rest are Hispanic, Latino, Indian. Why? Because small business owners work from their communities. And this year, I am pleased to say that Tim has created a different focus, and I'm pleased to be a part of it. Let's talk about what leadership does and what leadership is doing better. We don't want to say they're perfect, but they're doing it well, and it sets a tone for some things that you should hear. As I call their name, you can read their bios in their paper, in your booklet, but let me tell you some things you don't know about them. And first to come up is Castor Binion. Castor has been in Pittsburgh for 11 years, since 2006, and over that period of time has created over 46% minority participation in the housing authority contracts. He understands the value of leadership, and it has made a difference, and you'll hear more from him shortly. Dale Cottrell is the Chief Financial Officer for the Allegheny County Airport Authority, and you heard them mention the Airport Authority earlier, but he's responsible for the overall management and direction of the authority's financial operations, including the day-to-day management and control of all financial related activities. A CPA, he had a CPA firm for many years. I won't tell you how many because you'll try and figure out his age. But the Airport Authority is pleased to have him on board. Now this is really interesting because all of these next people also are CPAs. Rob D. Mache, who many of you know, he's been a stalwart with us in this whole diversity and inclusion march. Actually joined UPMC in 2004 and serves as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of UPMC, a $14 billion integrated healthcare delivery system. He's got many initiatives he does, things that he is doing, and many of you know him before joining UPMC. He held various positions with General Electric, GE Systems Transportation Group, and he too is a CPA that is on board, and thank you for being part of this panel. Next, we have Karen Hanlon. She's a CPA. Karen is Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for Highmark. She's been a CPA for more than 20 years of financial experience and working most of the time in the healthcare industry, serves as the Executive Vice President and is responsible for administering the corporation's financial and administrative activities, which you'll hear more about very shortly. And last but certainly not least, Ricardo Williams, who serves as the Manager for Equity and Inclusion and Neighborhood Empowerment for the City of Pittsburgh. He's going to define that and tell us more about that, how that breaks out and what that means as we pursue this discussion around diversity and inclusion. This is a leadership role. I'm trying to catch a cold, so forgive me. This is about leadership. And for the next probably 40 minutes, what I want to do is engage them in a discussion that allows you to better understand how you can engage with these different companies and government agencies. Castor, define your role and tell us a little bit about what you do to make supplier diversity successful.
Okay, the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh have over 10,000 residents, and we also in the process of building over 2,500 units. In that process, we will spend over $100 million, and we want to have the opportunity for MBEs and WBEs opportunity to participate in this process. We call it the process of getting a piece of the rock. Our website is hacp.org, and you can register your company on the website. But the thing that's very special is that when we have critical mass companies who bid on large developments, they must demonstrate that they have reached out to WBE and MBE companies. And we verified that process because they must submit in their bid process 10 letters indicated that they reach out. And we go out and verify that. And it had made such an impact that last year we had about 38% participation on an $18 million contract of a company with a $186 million budget. In 2013, we achieved 71% MBE, WBE participation.
And then you have someone that monitors that. But before you get into that, Dale, your role around supplier diversity, having been a part of that, I'm pleased to say, with the Airport Authority, tell us a little bit about how you roll that out.
Well, I'm really excited to be part of the authority. I've just joined them the last 6 months or so, and one of the things that joining them was the fact of what the things that are happening out there. One, we forget all the things that we have talked about today. No one mentioned that we are the airport of the year in the world at this point, so I think that's something else we have to mention. And the excitement of what I found there is it starts from the board all the way down through the senior management team to our CEO, who is very intentional, as we talked about earlier, about what we're supposed to be about. What we're looking at from the senior team all the way down to project managers of what we want to do moving forward to be inclusive, to have everybody involved. The way we look at this is to be the airport of the year, we have to be excellent. We have to be excellent at what we do. And to be excellent, we need to have people that are excellent, contractors that are excellent, and vendors that are that way. And if we start talking about that, how do we get that? What we start taking a look at, as was mentioned earlier, we can't do business with just certain people all the time. So what we want to do is through community outreach, we have small business fairs, we bring in people to talk about what we're doing. The African American Chamber of Commerce, we do workshops, we bring people in to talk about how do you do business with the airport. We are an authority. We have a lot of federal grants, which have a lot of red tape that you have to go through, but it's not that difficult once you know how to do it. So part of our job, from the senior team all the way down, is for us to make sure that we're getting out in the community, letting people know that they can do business with the authority. And what we want to do is, actually, we consider it to be, we want to have excellence for our employees and for the contractors and everybody we're dealing with. What we need to do is actually, the way it was explained to me from our CEO, that we want the funnel to be bigger. We want to include everyone, give everybody an opportunity. Pittsburgh has a lot of services, a lot of excellent people here, and we have a diverse community. What we want to do is include them all in the process to get down to the people that we know can do the job to make us continue to be the airport of the year.
And Christina came in with the marching orders.
Actually, they talked about strong leadership. If anybody has met Christina, at this point, if I don't do a good job here today, I may not be here tomorrow.
Thank you, Dale. Rob, tell us a little about your role around supplier diversity and what you've done to make it successful.
Sure, thanks, Doris. So in addition to my financial responsibilities, I also have supply chain management as part of my responsibilities. And so that's not only finding vendors which are high quality and low cost, but it's also driving the diversity initiative within the organization. But what I'd tell you is that I'm just a piece of that equation. And I think, as Dale mentioned also, it starts with, it is the entire organization that has to drive it. And for us, it starts with the leadership, our board, and it drives all the way down to the individual employees. But from a board standpoint, we have a supplier diversity, not supplier diversity, but we actually have a diversity and inclusion committee that is part of the board committees. They meet several times per year. Our chairman, Mr. Beckwith, attends those meetings. Management comes into those meetings and makes presentations. So I think Dr. Humphreys talked about measurement and things getting done when they're measured. So part of my annual goals is a supplier diversity target. It's annually been over $100 million. So I am measured on achieving that goal. And I think, like all of us, we do what we get measured on. So it's not only important to the organization, it's important to my success. So of course, it's a priority for me, and so I make it a priority. But we have a great team. I have Tony Silva and Joe Acey that support me, that are creative, that are passionate. And it's really the entire organization that's committed to the initiative. It's important to them, and therefore it's something that actually is acted upon and gets done. So I think it's really, as Dell said and others, it's the entire organization has to be behind the initiative for it to be a success.
We're going to talk about the team in a minute, and thank you for being so modest on your leadership. But Karen, tell us about your role around supplier diversity as you wear several different hats at Highmark, including treasurer.
Sure. So we as well at Highmark have our supplier diversity organization included within our finance enterprise. And so organizationally it reports to me, but I think most importantly, my role is to really serve as a champion within the organization for the supplier diversity program. And so sometimes that means reporting to our diversity and inclusion committee of the board of directors. Doris chairs that committee, so she's a tough cookie on it and asks lots of tough questions. But it also means being an ambassador within the organization to make sure that we have our leaders consistently thinking about how they can bring diverse suppliers to the table, engage, do outreach, be a part of what our responsibilities include. I spend a fair amount of time with our supplier diversity program manager, Bob James, who is here today. Bob does an incredible amount of outreach, and so quite a bit of time, my role is to support him. And he tells me, what he needs me focused on at the time, and where I can be adding the most value, and I make sure to support him in that way.
Thank you. Cardo, define for us your management that you're responsible for. I know it's diversity and inclusion, and then you've got this whole neighborhood initiative.
Yeah, Doris. First of all, I want to thank for being here. You heard my CEO earlier today, so hopefully I'll do a good job in sitting here with this esteemed panel. The Mayor Peduto put together the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment in 2014 when he came on board as mayor. And basically the Bureau, under the leadership of Valerie McDonald Roberts, who is my boss, And we're addressing constituent issues, but also concerns in regards to childhood education, economic development, small business and community development, welcoming Pittsburgh initiatives and special projects, and also the equal opportunity business contracting. And so I guess for purposes of me here being today, I have a tremendous team that I work with in the mayor's office that handle those concerns and those issues, and I support those efforts through B&E. But my role here today is the equal business opportunity contracting. And basically I work with a great number of volunteers. Two of them are here today. Tracy McCants Lewis is one of our ERC commissioners. Barry Nathan is here as well. And there are two of the appointees of 11 that Mayor Peduto has put together to review contracts in construction and professional services. So it's not just me and the staff of two reviewing these. Basically, we're looking at the compliance issues and also participation. So it's all the city departments and the authorities that we partner with. We don't have large percentages such as Castro had mentioned, but we're getting better with that. We reviewed $205 million worth of contracts. We had $44 million in participation last year. As far as number, and as far as the participation number, we're at 13 and 8, 13 minority, 8 women at this point, and we're getting better at that. So we're looking at processes internally. You heard the mayor earlier in doing that, and we intend to be better.
Let me stop you for a minute as a panel, and I appreciate Rob and Karen, but now I'd like to hear about your team, because these are the people that help to make not only the policy decision, but the leadership direction for what happens around supplier diversity. Castor, tell us about who monitors the success on contracting with minority and women-owned business.
Well, we have a young man named Kim Dietrich who run my procurement department. He responsible for procurement and also for the bids process. Also, the leadership of my board that want us to accomplish a high number of participation of minority and women businesses. My in-house man, what he does is he goes in and he works with contractors, developers, and suppliers and vendors to ensure that everyone get an opportunity to participate. Because of his commitment and the board commitment, we're able to achieve high levels of participation. And when you talk about, even though agency with a $180 million plus budget, it might be small, but at the same time, we're able to, get above 30% participation. Sure. And I think that's big. And we continue to work to engage the community to have greater opportunities as we continue to build the city for more affordable housing.
Dale, tell us about your management team. Tell us about the team that actually handles supplier diversity.
Yeah, actually, we have Samantha Stedford, who handles our business diversity and outreach. And part of what she does is to get the word out to make sure that we are involved as the authority getting to roundtables such as this and other places to let people, because I think a lot of times small businesses are a little bit afraid to put in a bid at an airport, not really understanding all the airport rules and regulations. We're sort of a different type of entity. What we're trying to do is to break that barrier, say that yes, we have maintenance responsibilities, we have construction contracts of all various sizes. Part of what Samantha's job is to get our management team and various us out speaking and talking to different people as we go. We have Angela McGriff, who looks at our contracting, and we start talking about every month at our board meeting. Our board asks us what percentages we're looking at hiring, where are our contracts. And part of our process, as was mentioned earlier, when we do have a contract, there's many times that under federal regulations or state regulations or things that we're saying that we want to have minority businesses involved. We track that. We have a system where there are contractors, has a major contractor, would actually make payments to the minority contractor. We have to verify that to make sure that that's actually happening. So once again, we started from the top, from Christina, all the way down to the levels that we are intentional. I keep using the term, which I thought was a good word that we're using. We are intentional to continue to use all the resources that are available to us in this region.
And Rob, you talked about it, but tell us about the formal reporting structure and who actually monitors. You talked a little bit earlier, but you can expand on that.
So as I mentioned, the board actually monitors, and executive management monitors our progress or lack thereof and the level of spend. And so it starts at the top. Tony, Silva, and Joel run the program for us, and I think what they bring, their unique skill set, I think, is their creativity. They are bringing, and I challenge them to bring new ideas, to bring fresh ideas, to advance the ball. We want to be a trendsetter. We want to really break new ground, and I think they do an excellent job of doing that. The other thing I think is important to note is that with just those two in a very large organization, we could never achieve what we've done and what we aspire to do with just those two. And it isn't just a strategy where diversity is bolted on, but we really want to make sure that it's built in, especially to make sure in procurement that once we make an introduction and we have a relationship, is the vendor actually being used? We rely on the actual construction group and the category managers in these individual spend areas. I think someone said earlier, those are the ones that actually have the budgets and the dollars that are spending. So part of Joel and Tony's role is to be the liaison, to build that relationship, to be that connection between the vendor and the actual person that issues the purchase order. So I view them really as connectors, as liaisons that really drive it throughout the organization, those that actually have the budgets to spend.
Thank you. Karen, tell us about the formal reporting structure and who actually monitors the success of contracting with minority and women-owned businesses.
Sure, yeah, very similarly. Ultimately, it's the committee of the board that monitors diversity and inclusion activities across the board, so not just supplier diversity, but also all of our corporate practices. But within the procurement organization, every month, they're looking at where we're at, what contracts are being awarded. I'm sure you'll get to the Rooney Rule, Doris, but we've instituted in the supplier diversity program at Highmark, the Rooney Rule. So that's one of the things that every month they're sitting down and going through to make sure that we're meeting those objectives. And then we've also implemented, I'll call it an ambassador program, a responsibility program that really takes the areas that spend the most on contracts, the top 10, and brings those people together on a quarterly basis to go through the spend reporting, to understand how we're doing, where we're doing well, and to think about how they can take what they're hearing in terms of successes in other parts of the enterprise and leverage those things within their own group.
Ricardo, how have you embraced the Rooney Rule within the city?
A number of ways. You heard Mayor Peduto earlier. Basically, with the executive order that he's put in place, it's never been done in the history of the city of Pittsburgh. That's one. Two, he's making sure that the legislation is going to be codified into law as a permanent policy and practice for diversity and inclusion. You heard Janet Manuel earlier. She's new to the team, and she's responsible, as well as I, for the implementation and practice of it. And in the executive order, when you have a chance to read it, it talks about Office of Management and Budget. It talks about personnel. It talks about the authorities. It talks about all city departments actually following this template to move forward in hiring practices in the city. So Mayor Peduto has embraced it, and basically it's going to be in the fabric of the city because we're pushing legislation through council to make sure it's law.
If I go back and look at what you've done, Castor, with the Housing Authority, I mean, you kind of had the Rooney Rule before it was enacted in the Housing Authority, but tell us a little bit about how you've embraced that in policies.
Well, we want to make sure that we have diversity, and when we interview, we want to make sure that we interview high qualified people, but at the same time, there is a diversity in the recruiting process. Our population of people is diverse, who we serve, so we have a diverse board and also staff, and also at the executive staff level.
Dale, your new administration, how have you embraced the Rooney Rule?
When we take a look at the Rooney Rule, as we talked about earlier, is trying to make sure that we are getting all the qualified candidates there. The Airport Authority has not really adopted an official Rooney Rule, but we are very intentional about the fact of making sure that we have all the candidates that are available to interview. And once again, of talking about the fact that we want to make sure that we're just not doing business with the same people we've always done business with in the past. When Christina came in a couple years ago, she was come to make some change, and she's made a lot of changes, as you've known, about new flights. And staff is turning over what we're looking at as we go through the various candidates that we're looking at, that we are getting more diverse. We continue to report that on a monthly basis, and we are looking for the best candidates wherever those candidates are. And we know that there is, in a diverse community, there's a lot of candidates that we need to be looking at, and we are including everyone at this point.
Rob, how has UPMC embraced the Rooney Rule?
Well, I think it's beyond the Rooney Rule, because we can bring...
You've been at this for a while.
We can bring qualified candidates to bear and put them on a bidding list, but I think what ultimately we want to measure is, again, are we spending dollars? Are we issuing POs? And I think what we want to focus on is how do we make it easy? Because, again, the people with the budgets, they have responsibilities, whether it's construction or healthcare. They're very busy. There are all kinds of demands on their time. And it's easy for them to go with a incumbent vendor, someone that they've had a relationship with, that they've worked with for years. So it's easier for them to be with the status quo and to not change. So in addition to bringing those suppliers to bear, I view one of the key roles of Tony and Joel is to make it easy for them to use a new vendor, to make it easy for them to orient them into the system. What are kind of the secrets to working with UPMC? So we have to make it easy for them to integrate into the system. So the Rooney Rule is great in itself, but we don't want people to walk away just to say, well, I was on a list, or I got a chance to bid. We have to measure it on actually issuing POs. So I think the key is the Rooney Rule is the first step, but the second one, especially in a large organization, how do you actually integrate them into the process, learn kind of the culture, the inner workings, so that they're able to do business quickly, efficiently, effectively, really navigating the inner workings of a large organization. That has to go hand in hand with the Rooney Rule to drive success.
Karen, what has been the impact of Highmark embracing the Rooney Rule?
Yeah, so we're using the Rooney Rule in two respects, both in terms of hiring practices, but also in terms of supplier diversity. I think in both cases, we've had over 90% participation. So for supplier diversity, that means that in over 90% of the contracts that we're bidding, we make sure that we have a diverse supplier included.
Okay.
And if we don't, I know that Bob James has definitely looked at it and has concluded there's a legitimate reason, and we couldn't. But other than that, we will have one in.
Thank you. What would you like to see happen in your organization, Castor, that would help to enhance supplier diversity for the Housing Authority? I mean, are there little things that could happen both through government, do a lot of work with the federal government, but what would you like to see happen to really embrace and enhance the Housing Authority?
Well, I say...
And keep your mics close, too,
okay,
so that people can hear you.
What I would say is, just before I came here, I was looking at some numbers, and I can see that we and our partners sent out a lot of information as far as the bid process and try to get minority and women businesses and veteran businesses to participate, in our process. Sent out lots of information, but it's very small numbers of people who continue to participate.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's I think that we have to work with our partners to continue to network. I'm not sure that companies know the process of getting qualified as a MBE or WBE or small business companies. I think I need to work more, with my government agencies and partners and to allow more people to participate because, yes, we do have the critical mass companies out there who achieve and win bids, but it also an opportunity for small companies who provide supplies, water, trucking, and all other type of businesses to participate. As this city builds, everybody should get an opportunity to participate. So what I would say to improve this relationship, I need to continue to work with my partners, government agencies, with you and other people to get the word out, get qualified, build your capacity, and be ready to take a piece of the rock of the city as we move forward.
Dale, talk about the bid process. I mean, I want us to get into a discussion now about this whole area of certification and the bid process.
Well, I'd just like to follow up a little bit about when you're talking about the bid process of getting people to bid. I feel like today I'm probably speaking to the choir here today. The people that should be here aren't here are the ones that we need to be talking to. We talked earlier about, when you talk about the bid process, about the education, community outreach. The more that we can get out and explain how you do bid for the authority and following up with workshops. Actually, we do have workshops where we bring people out to show them everything from our de-icing pads to our runways and different specialty things that we have to do. So to get the bids, we do try to get as much information out as we can to different people to get the bids in. And what we're really looking for is the more people we get, you get competition, you get better prices we talked about and looking for. But one of the things I think we also run into, I think a lot of times they look at a big organization, whether it be the authority or UPMC, or they think, I can't bid on something like that, it's way too big for me. A lot of times I think they need to take a look, give us a call. There could be pieces of the contract that our engineering department can break out. There's different things that we could say, yes, you could do this part. And the other thing I think is real important, that I'm not sure a lot of small businesses think about, how about a joint venture? Rather than us getting one major contractor, get several small businesses together, women businesses, minority businesses together as a joint venture and take on that particular project. Different skill levels are there. Now that takes some cooperation, takes some getting to do, but we think that would be a way that then we get a lot more involvement, a lot more people involved in the process itself. But once again, we send out information, we ask for bids, and then at that point, getting the responses back at times. Sometimes it gets to be frustrating because we're ready to award this to competent bidders if we can just get them to bid. So once again, I think everyone that's here needs to talk to everybody who's not here, and let's get them on the list.
I think he mentioned some very key points, those of you that are business owners,
yes,
about participating, and I'd like for Rob to kind of expand on that because you've been a soldier at this for quite some time. This whole bid process and making sure that contracts can be broken down.
Well, I want to hit a point that Dell brought up, and I think it's an important one because, we're up here. There are a number of corporations that support these initiatives, but there are many that don't. And I think we're at a point now where how do we mature the process? How do we mature these companies? Well, the entire region needs to mature. It needs to involve and make this a priority. And I don't think it's done that yet. I mean, it's, as Tim said, it's 150 years. Mm-hmm. That seems like a long time to me. We need to move faster. But I'm going to use Share as an example. We had record performance, and Share's many of us participate where we bring diverse suppliers together and also corporations. We bring them in to really have a matchmaking session, if you will. And the great news about it is that we had 75 MWDBEs attend. We had 35 corporations attend, which was an all-time record. So that's the good part of it. We had 200 meetings. The bad part of it is that last year we invited 134 corporations, and only 33 showed up last year. So that was about a 25% hit rate. This year we tried to expand. We invited 233 corporations in Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania to participate, and we only had 35. So the hit rate basically went down. We had about 15% participation. So
makes a difference.
What company wouldn't want to spend a day meeting with suppliers, any suppliers, whether they're diverse or not, as an opportunity to improve their business, to lower prices, to improve quality? Why wouldn't you show up for a day to have that kind of a meeting with a potential new supplier? And so this is part of the problem. When we have a smaller supply base, they're younger companies, they're immature companies, we're forcing them to deal with large mega organizations as opposed to kind of working their way up the ladder with small business, medium-sized business, and then being able to handle the larger size corporations. So I think we've got to get better engagement from the rest of the community. It isn't just the folks that attend these meetings and the other sessions that we have. It's where's the rest of Pittsburgh? Where's the rest of corporate Pittsburgh? Where's the rest of the private businesses in Pittsburgh? It really takes the community to build these companies to get them the capabilities they need to service the larger corporations.
Thank you. And before I go on, I just want to mention Stuart said we had 2 minutes left, but we were late getting started. So we're going to take our full time.
That's good.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Tim, fearless leader. Karen, talk about the bid process, breaking out. You've done some admirable things recently in terms of making sure that women and minority businesses get to participate, but also talk about the fact of minority businesses doing business with each other, because that's something I want to resonate in this room for small business owners. UPMC has been a part of that. Housing Authority has talked about that. I want to make sure that everyone hears this clearly.
Yeah, I guess two things to say about that. One is we have been doing what we call vendor certifications, so making sure that we get these vendors in well in advance of us even thinking about what sort of RFP we need to issue. And we introduce ourselves to that vendor, allow them to meet us and learn about Highmark a little bit better, and obviously we learn a lot more about them, so that when the RFP finally comes, we've already done enough work to know that there should be a fit to be made. So that's one thing, and as part of that, and then an offshoot of that, we're early in starting what we call a mentor protege program, which is both providing for the vendor somebody within the organization that they can connect with to help them reach in at the ground floor level and build up in terms of their business relationship with us, but also where we can to actually take multiple vendors and partner them to be able to offer the services, so that if one contract is just too large, maybe they can play a role in that contract alongside of another vendor and grow into the contract more readily.
Ricardo, what has been the city's experience on unbundling, if you will, or just getting more minority vendors? Because I know you do a lot of tracking now.
Yeah, we're doing two different ways. A lot of the panel has mentioned about having people come to open houses and so forth for bid opportunities. In fact, the city actually sends out the bid opportunities. We ask people to register on our site. It's called Beacon. Last year in 2015 we rolled that out. We had 1,500 vendors on the site itself. Proud to say that 25% of that was minority, women, and veterans on that site for a new site that just came out for the city. And so that's kind of one of our metrics kind of coming out and being able to bring it in a lot easier for vendors to be able to do. We also instituted last year B2G Now, which is a diversity management tracking software of every contract that comes through. So whatever the awarded amount is and the vendor amount that's supposed to be for the MWBE, we're able to kind of track that spend month by month. As the vendor gets paid, an email goes out to all the subcontractors to let them know that the prime has been paid on that contract. That's something new to Pittsburgh. We're kind of slow to that, but there's a number of organizations across the country and government entities that actually have this software. And so we're looking at trying to infuse that in our procurement processes too. As talking with our procurement officers and trying to make them more engaged and more involved in the process. So when you talk about unbundling, we're saying, okay, let's look at the package a little bit. Let's break it up. We could measure it at each component of it. The software has 10 tiers of management that you can do on it. So if you have 30 vendors, 40 vendors on a big contract, we could manage the spend on all of them moving forward month by month.
I mention that because for some time, we would always hear that it was too expensive to try and break contracts apart. We've got a leadership team here that understands the value of what happens when you do that. And as we get ready to wind down on our panel discussion, which I appreciate very much, let me ask each of you a question as we wrap up. Castor, you told us a little bit about the participation of minorities on your contracts at the Housing Authority, and you're to be commended for that, you and your team. But are the majority of your contracts let to minority vendors in this region?
Yes, I would say kind of. Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
But I would say some critical mass contractors, some might be out of town, but that impact what we demand if you're going to do business with the Housing Authority. We do not want to see people from out of town and consultants coming in, and while we have the talent here in the city of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big ones, we have this thing called Choice Neighborhood in East Liberty. I'm not going to name the company, but they would normally go into a city and achieve a lot, but they would bring their people in to do the work. The Housing Authority demand, yes, you can assist with this process of getting this grant for us. However, you must hire the people in the city of Pittsburgh to do the work here on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the type of relationships that we try to build.
Okay, thank you. Dale?
Yeah, we've actually been tracking, and we estimate we're very close. About 80% of the minority contractors that we're dealing with are in the region at this point. And we continue to want to try to keep locally, as much as we can locally, finding the expertise that we need. Our business plan really says that we're looking for a total of 14% overall. That's what we're working for all contracts that we're letting. Our construction contracts are beyond that number, but overall, we're trying to improve that as we go. But around 80% is what we're looking at locally here now.
Rob, you and UPMC have done a number of great things in the past, and tell us a little bit about what's next. What's the new initiative or breakthrough that you can talk about for UPMC on supplier diversity?
Sure. I think one of the things that maybe some of you or even who have dealt with UPMC may be frustrated with is sometimes as a large organization, you have an initial meeting, you get qualified as a bidder, and then somehow get lost in the shuffle and either forgotten or certainly not leading to an opportunity for you to do business with UPMC. So what we want to do is actually, and this is something Tony and Joel and I are working on, is we want to create something that's akin to a sales pipeline report. So if you think a traditional sales pipeline, you have leads and you track them all the way till they become closed sales. And what we've talked about is actually doing something very similar for supplier diversity, where we track all the leads, whether it's meetings that we have, whether it's inquiries from the outside. That starts at the beginning of the pipeline. But we actually have a formal mechanism to track them through the pipeline to see where they drop out. That's an opportunity. We really want to judge the throughput yield, if you will, those initial leads to actually the purchase orders that are issued and the payments that are made to those diverse vendors. So I think it's a way to hold ourselves accountable for our actual activity. So it isn't just about getting the leads and getting folks qualified, it's actually about dollars and cents. So this is something that we thought would make us more accountable. We want to try to roll this out over the next year or two, and I think we're going to learn, Doris, from, again, where we have gaps in our process, where we can do a better job. But again, ultimately, it isn't about the leads or the front end or the meetings or the conferences that you go to. It's about the dollars and cents, and this is a way we think we're going to hold ourselves accountable and then maybe create a model that we can share with others.
How to make better best.
Yes.
Karen, you've had some interesting experiences in the last 3 years and have really moved the needle at Highmark. Share with us where you see that going and the impact you see it can have on supplier diversity.
Sure, yeah. I think, in the next year, there are probably a couple of things that come to mind most prominently that we're going to focus on. One is that mentor protege program, because that really was just started the second half of last year, so we have more in the way of maturity to do on that. The second thing is that business ambassador group that I mentioned, the ambassadors for the areas that represent the top 10 spenders in the organization, the advancement of that, and really having those individuals that are around that table quarterly carrying that message back more deeply within their organizations, so that when we have a diverse supplier at the table, that they've been armed with the right information to make sure that we're looking at all possibilities as it relates to that vendor. So those are probably the two largest areas of focus for the next year.
I know, Stuart, I'm on it now. I have 2 minutes. Let me say this, Ricardo, as we're wrapping this up, and you've kind of shared with us your next steps. To the panel in general, I appreciate your leadership for what you've done and your ability to come here this morning and share. 4 years ago, this panel included business owners talking about the challenges that they all faced in advancing procurement. You're helping to move the needle, each of you, and we appreciate what you've done. We applaud you. We encourage you to do more. And if you do more, the better can become best. Thank you, Castor Binion from the Housing Authority, Dale Cottrell, Airport Authority, our friend Rob DeMache, UPMC, Karen Hanlon, Highmark, and Ricardo from Williams from the City of Pittsburgh for being on the panel today. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody on the panel. Really great information and real progress being made. As you will see if you look at your schedule, we have blown through the break. Being a good MC, and of course paying attention to my timekeeper, we should just plunge on with our program. However, I do think it would be good for all of us to take 5 or 6 minutes to sort of clear our heads, to digest everything we've heard, because we're going to switch subjects when we come back and start talking about workplace culture. So let's all take a 5 or 6 minute break. We'll reconvene. We've got to be started up again by about 10 o'clock for our next presenter. Thanks.